A blunt blade hurts the most, but a silent truth kills faster. While the capital mocks Princess Eleanor for sharpening a butcher's knife every time her husband takes a new mistress, no one knows the jagged truth. To the world, she's a jealous fool. To her husband, she's a nuisance not worth a glance. But why does a man who claims to hate her surround himself with concubines who are all mere shadows of the wife he refuses to touch? She moved mountains to save him. Now, he's tearing her soul apart, one mistress at a time. In a dynasty built on blood, is he her cold-blooded executioner, or is ruining her the only way to keep her alive? I'm the proprietress of the Carefree Pavilion, the #1 music house under heaven. The woman sitting across from me, brows knitted, eyes blazing as she ran a blade over a whetstone, was my closest friend. She was the emperor's most favored 11th princess, Princess Eleanor. This wasn't the first time she'd come here to sharpen a knife. The first time she raised hell was when Lucian Jiang, the prince consort, took his first concubine. The girl was the only daughter of Magistrate Liu of Pinhai County. I'd seen her once from afar, head bowed, docile and meek, nothing like Princess Eleanor. Before the new woman could even serve her tea, Princess Eleanor charged into the Carefree Pavilion, snatched the butcher's cleaver from the back kitchen, lugged in a whetstone, and stormed into my room. She sharpened as she cursed Lucian Jiang for his ingratitude. For 3 full hours, she didn't repeat herself once. After that, every time Lucian Jiang took another concubine, Princess Eleanor came to my place to make a scene. They'd been married a year, and we'd already ruined several kitchen knives from her sharpening. I'd tried to persuade her, too. Men were everywhere. If one didn't work out, she could switch to a new one every day. But she was stubborn as a rock. She insisted on locking horns with Lucian Jiang to the bitter end. Just as she was shouting again about ending his bloodline, I finished the last seed. The new bride comes in today. You might not even get to see your Lucian Jiang. I treat you like my own sister, and all you do is pour cold water on me, Princess Eleanor snapped, waving the cleaver at me. Lower your voice, my lady. You're scaring customers off. If the Carefree Pavilion goes under, you'll have to feed me. I snatched the cleaver from her hand. I'm just a woman with no power and no backing. Do you think I can smash up the princess's residence or tie Lucian Jiang up? If I dared, you'd be bringing me cornbread in prison tomorrow for my last meal. She seemed to picture it and burst out laughing. I wasn't in the mood. I rolled my eyes. If you've got the nerve, stop throwing tantrums here and go make trouble for your husband. How do you know I haven't? Princess Eleanor slapped the table so hard the pile of seed shells trembled. I nearly tore the roof off the princess's residence. He didn't even lift an eyelid. I had someone tell my fortune. It's going to rain tonight. Tear the tiles off his study roof, and I guarantee he'll look at you. Her bravado drained away. She mumbled for ages without managing a complete sentence, then put on a show of clutching her head and collapsing into my arms. Ow, my head hurts. It hurts. In the end, she just didn't want Lucian Jiang to hate her. I sighed. I stopped arguing and let her carry on in my room. Before he married, Lucian Jiang was the prize every young lady in the imperial capital wanted. Not only was he handsome, he'd become a vice minister at the Ministry of War at a young age. He was polished in society, steady in office, praised by officials across the court. Everyone said he was destined for greatness. The emperor must have thought so too. That was why he was willing to marry off his most cherished daughter to him. On the wedding day, the emperor stood at the palace gate watching Princess Eleanor climb into the bridal sedan. Dust blew into his eyes, and he actually shed 2 tears. Lucian Jiang wore red robes and a jade crown. He stood tall and straight. The wedding procession was loud and festive. The dowry cart stretched for 2 full streets. Even the eldest princess sent off in a political marriage hadn't received so much. Of course, I only heard about all that. The banquet guests were all nobles and officials, each of them looking righteous while hiding who knew what behind their faces. I had no interest in that kind of spectacle. Instead, I held a feast for Princess Eleanor at the Carefree Pavilion. That day, the Carefree Pavilion was packed. Famous performers and idol patrons, strings and flutes, song and dance. Everyone drank their fill and ate to their heart's content. I stood alone by the second-floor window, watching the wedding procession pass our doors. A corner of the curtain on the sedan's little window lifted. Through the noisy crowd, Princess Eleanor smiled at me and shook her head. Playful as a child. That day she had an 8-bearer sedan and a bridal procession 10 miles long. For a while, she outshone everyone. People said Princess Eleanor was lucky. She believed it too. She cherished that luck from the bottom of her heart, afraid that one careless step would shatter it. The 11th princess, always wild and unruly, grew quiet for the first time in her life. For 2 months she didn't step beyond the gates. She acted like a proper young lady. When did word spread that the princess and her husband were on bad terms? Probably when she returned to the palace, 2 months later. I don't know what happened inside the palace. I only know that the next day, Lu Xinjiang brought home Magistrate Liu of Pinhai County's daughter. There were no formal betrothal rites, only a single bridal sedan carrying the new bride through the door. There had never been any rule that a prince consort could take concubines, but the emperor seemed to allow it. Princess Eleanor made trouble too. She found an excuse to send Miss Liu out of the residence. Lu Xinjiang didn't get angry. He let her. There were countless girls in the world. If it wasn't Miss Liu, there would be Lily or Zoe. The same people who'd called her lucky now pitied her. That was how the world worked. Other people's joys and sorrows were a joke to you. You laughed and then you forgot. The moment you took it seriously, you became the joke. And it's ridiculous because I was that joke. Boom, a clap of thunder yanked me back to the present. Night had fallen completely. The rain roared down in one unbroken sheet. I wondered if Princess Eleanor had really ripped the tiles off Lu Xinjiang's study roof. Bring me wine. A drunk staggered in from outside, soaked through and collapsed onto a table. Sir, we're closed. Please head home. A server about to bolt the door went to help him up and got shoved away. Where would I go? Where else? Home, of course. Look at this rain. If no one can find you, your family will worry. Home. The man wiped wet hair off his face, revealing pale, clean features. He cried and laughed at the same time. It was unsettling. Home's already gone. Her home's about to be gone too, so why don't I feel anything? Not even a little. The server hurried back 2 steps and looked at me for help, as if he'd run into a madman. I stood on the wooden stairs and watched from a distance. He looked familiar. The sight of him irritated me for no reason, but I couldn't place where I'd seen him. Fine, toss him into the woodshed for now, I said. If no one comes for him tomorrow, we'll take him in and make him a musician here. In the end, that drunk didn't stay with us. The next day, when the server went to check on him in the kitchen, he was gone. The staff muttered about ghosts, and panic spread through the carefree pavilion. I could only spend money to hire someone to perform rituals. The fuss went on for days. I didn't see Princess Eleanor again until much later. She wore a luxurious rouge-colored gown embroidered with gilded peonies. Her hair was piled into a cloud-like bun, pinned with a silver butterfly hairpin with tassels. She paced furiously around my room. The jade pendants at her waist clinked and chimed until my head ached. In the past, if Lu Xinjiang wasn't taking concubines, you wouldn't come to me, I said. What is it today? Did you get divorced? I rummaged in the cabinet for snacks. The sunflower seeds were gone, so I poured myself tea and watched her with undisguised glee. Divorced? Princess Eleanor bristled. Only I get to divorce him. What a bold, heroic princess, I said. Go on then, divorce him. Let me see it. She went sheepish and clung to my arm. Lu Xinjiang has been strange lately. Lu Xinjiang, every other word was his name. My mood soured. I narrowed my eyes at her and said nothing. She started shaking my arm, cleared her throat, and put on a sweet, theatrical voice. My dear sister, you care about me the most. Help me think of something. That sister nearly sent me to an early grave. I yanked my arm away. Tell me. That day, after I left the carefree pavilion and went back, I planned to make Lu Xinjiang miserable, but I searched the entire residence and couldn't find him. The rain was pouring. I sent out more than half the household servants to look. We searched all night. I almost called in the Imperial Guards, and still, nothing. On the wedding night, the bride spent it alone. She didn't make a scene with you? Princess Eleanor snorted. That woman went to sleep early. She must have married in for the wealth and splendor. I nodded. She's got nerve. Who is she? A maid from the Ashford Marquisate. Not very old. Fair-looking. Forget her. That night I didn't sleep at all. Then at dawn, he walked out of his study. I laughed. So he vanished and reappeared? I know a ritual master who's very effective. Want me to introduce him? She ignored my sarcasm and kept going. I asked where he'd been. He wouldn't say. It's always the same lines. The princess is overthinking. Please calm down. I deserve death. I got so angry I tore the roof off his study. I burst out laughing. Didn't you drive him mad? In her story, Lucian John lived in that study. Food, clothes, sleep, everything was there. He read by lamplight, rose at dawn, worked himself to the bone. That's the strange part, she said. Not only did he not get angry, he dismissed all the concubines. Oh, I was surprised, though I couldn't tell whether I liked it or not. So you finally got your clear sky and bright moon? Princess Eleanor pulled a miserable face. If only, he's still the same with me. Distant and lukewarm. No, worse. Before, he let me make trouble. Now I never see him. He leaves before dawn and comes back late. He's gotten thinner, too. Maybe he's possessed, I said after thinking it over, bravely offering my opinion. That ritual master really is. She gave me a look. It makes me uneasy. Do you think he has some incurable illness and didn't tell me? Her conclusion nearly made me choke. Evil men live forever. He's harmed so many girls. He won't fall sick that easily. That makes sense. She nodded in satisfaction, then asked with fresh worry. Then could it be that I have an incurable illness? I should have that ritual master come and cure your brain, I said. She hooked my arm again and tugged me toward her, deliberately putting on a coy tone. It's a sickness of the heart. Only my sister's massage can fix it. Enough. She laughed herself into a heap and kept chattering. Lucian Jang this, Lucian Jang that. Praise one moment, curses the next. She lingered until noon and insisted on eating at my place. I stole the braised meatball from her bowl and asked, You haven't gone to the palace lately? The empress said a daughter who marries out is like water poured out, she said. She won't let me keep going back in case my husband's family finds fault. She reached out and snatched another meatball. I rolled my eyes internally. Lucian John, finding fault? How thick-skinned could he be? But father has been very busy, she added. He hardly goes to the empress's place either. He probably doesn't have time to see me. Princess Eleanor had told me her mother had once been the emperor's favorite consort. Princess Eleanor herself stood out among the princesses. Pretty, charming, impossible not to love. If even she couldn't see him, the emperor must truly have something major on his hands. Our chopsticks tangled as we fought over the last meatball. She didn't dare squeeze too hard for fear of crushing it, so instead she strained with her whole face, her pretty features scrunching up like a bitter gourd. In the end, she lost and resigned herself to a piece of fish, still pulling a face at me. I came today and saw you have fewer customers, she said. What, can't keep business going? I chewed the meatball calmly and answered around the mouthful. A few regulars haven't shown up in days. Maybe it's because of the rituals. Hey, put down that braised pork. I'll take it. We ate and fought until every dish was wiped clean. We could have skipped washing the bowls. After lunch, we agreed to go for a walk. Instead, we both ended up sprawled on the daybed. Princess Eleanor stared at me from her couch. I ignored her. She clambered over to mine and curled up beside me, stealing the most comfortable spot she could find. A princess loved by all, yet she looked like a kitten, always afraid of being abandoned. I found it funny, but I couldn't laugh. Afternoon light filtered through the paper window, warm and lazy on the skin. Sleep crept over me. Yawning, I asked, Why do you like Lucian John so much? She wriggled closer, her voice thick with drowsiness. Haven't I told you 100 times? Do you ever listen to me? She had told me 100 times. It was like those cheap storybooks about a pampered young lady and a fallen companion student, boring and cliché. In 4 words, love at first sight. No, love that lasted forever. But I always felt something was missing. Something that made Lucian John's heart turn to ice so he wouldn't even look at her. Something that made Princess Eleanor swallow her pride and share one husband with others. Something I'd always been curious about and afraid to know. Leaves rustled in the wind and tapped the window lattice. My eyelids fought a losing battle. At last, I fell asleep. When I woke up, Princess Eleanor was gone. A gold-embroidered outer robe lay over me, the one she'd been wearing when she arrived. A server said people from the princess's residence had come to fetch her. They were in a hurry. Something must have happened there. My temples throbbed. I rubbed them and said casually, "Princess Eleanor is the emperor's darling. What could possibly happen at the princess's residence?" Even so, I couldn't stop myself from sending someone to ask around. 2 days later, my man reported back. More guards had appeared outside the princess's residence. Lucian Jiang had returned to the Ministry of War and been promoted to Minister of War, first rank. Across all dynasties, there had never been a precedent for a prince consort taking concubines, or a prince consort commanding the military. Now he had broken both. What a figure. I didn't dare think further. My head ached fiercely. Perhaps I'd caught a chill. I was restless all day. Business was hard too. The main hall held only a few scattered customers. The private rooms were often occupied by nobles, but they only ordered a pot of plain tea and sat there all day. At this rate, my carefree pavilion would shut its doors. I found a chance to host a few familiar old patrons myself. After several rounds of drinks, they told me Marquis Ashford had been raising many private soldiers in Pinhai County. He was likely planning something big. Someone had already submitted a memorial to the emperor yesterday, but the court made no move. It was very possible the Marquis had already hollowed it out. I kept smiling and topping off their cups, but inside I went cold. Anyone who could still sit here laughing at a time like this had already arranged their escape route. And Princess Eleanor? Did she have any route at all? The situation grew unstable, and the carefree pavilion's business worsened by the day. I had no choice but to dismiss the performers and servants, keeping only those with nowhere else to go. These past days, I went through the accounts. After daily expenses, there was still a bit set aside, as lavish as Lucian Jiang's life, but enough to support a foolish little idiot with rotten luck in men. The princess's residence remained guarded. For a long time, I had no news of Princess Eleanor. One day I sat at the door drinking tea and cracking sunflower seeds. A crowd rushed past, shoving and shouting as they ran toward the palace. "Where are you all going?" I called out. Someone in the crowd shouted back, "Marquis Ashford has rebelled. The old emperor dead." My heart lurched. I crushed the teacup in my hand. No one noticed the blood seeping from my palm. I wiped it on my embroidered skirt, face dark, and went back inside. 2 days later, I finally learned what had happened to Princess Eleanor. Lucian Jiang had thrown her into the dungeon. I carried a food basket to see her. Bribing my way in cost me 2 years of the carefree pavilion's income. The cell seemed specially refitted for her. There was a bed, a cabinet, a table and chairs. 100 days of kindness for 1 day of marriage. Lucian Jiang be too harsh about her food and shelter. Princess Eleanor sat on a meditation mat, still as a monk. She wore a gray prison uniform, no jewelry, no pendants. Her frame looked thinner, and her face held an age and exhaustion I'd never seen on her. I stood before her. She smiled at me, but I couldn't smile back. This wasn't an escape route. It was a dead end. "You've only been in here a few days." "Why do you look like you've been sick for 800 years? She froze, then toppled into my arms laughing. "It's love sickness. There is a beauty, and once I see them, I can't forget. 1 day without seeing them, and I long like madness." She blinked up at me, her eyes animal bright with a hint of illness. "See, the moment you came, I got better. Get lost. All you do is talk nonsense." My heart ached, but my mouth stayed sharp. "What did you bring me?" She pretended to be light-hearted as she opened the basket. Inside were only a jug of wine and 2 cups. She paused, then suddenly laughed, a flush rising on her cheeks. "You really do know me." The cell was damp and cold. Lucian Jiang had provided a small brazier. We sat around it and drank. "Actually, the last time I went to see you, Father was already very ill. He told the palace people to hide it from me." Cough. She poured herself a cup and knocked it back in one gulp, nearly choking tears out. "I'm sorry." "They say the imperial family is the most heartless," she said, looking at me pitifully. She was on the verge of tears, yet she forced a stubborn smile. "But Father must have cared about me at least a little, right?" I suddenly remembered a dream I'd been having lately. In it, a lake lay between us. I watched her wade deeper and deeper into the water, caught in a whirlpool. I shouted her name in panic, but she couldn't hear. I could only watch her sink, helpless. Every time I remembered that helplessness, My chest hurt like 1,000 bee stings, dense, lingering pain. We clinked cups and traded drinks. She told me many stories from the past, how her gentle mother had died over a bowl of lotus seed porridge, how her wet nurse taught her to survive in the man-eating inner palace, what the weather was like the day she met Lucien Jiang, and how he stood on the jade steps by the palace gate, solemn and austere. She rambled on, mostly about family and husband. Now, she had neither. Neither of us could hold our liquor. After a few cups, we were drunk, slapping the table, crying one moment and laughing the next, like two miserable lunatics. When the feeling dulled, Princess Eleanor urged me to leave. I stumbled over and hugged her. "Don't worry. Even if I have to sell the carefree pavilion, I'll get you out." If Lucien Jiang couldn't be her way out, then I would. When I left the prison, the sun was the same sun, glaring so bright it hurt my eyes. I was about to head back when I ran into someone I knew. In broad daylight. Am I seeing ghosts? I shook my head, looked harder, then smacked my forehead. Fueled by wine, I jabbed a finger at his brow. "You're that drunk. No, you're Lucien Jiang." The red tint on my nails looked especially vivid in the sunlight. I thought how beautiful it would be if those nails left a few bloody cuts across his face. Lucien Jiang clasped his hands in greeting. He hadn't even changed out of his official robes, and he looked composed and courteous. Who would think such a courteous man had just thrown his lawful wife into the dungeon? I giggled. "People say you rose young and fast and you're deep as the sea. I should have known no guard would let me in so easily. So you already knew I'd come." He didn't take the bait. After a long silence, he forced out, "Princess Eleanor likes you." "Like my ass. Who wants that little idiot liking them?" I laughed and cursed. So many men in the world, and she had to marry a bastard. "She drives me crazy every day." He ignored my provocation. "Is she all right?" "What do you think?" I sneered. "Thanks to you, she won't die in the next hour or two." He hesitated. "What did she say to you?" His question set my teeth on edge. I was afraid I'd slap him. I only waved a hand. "Commoners don't fight officials. If you really want to know, take off that robe and bring silver to the carefree pavilion." The next day, Lucien Jiang came. I was draped over the counter doing the accounts. These days, after food and lodging, I was already spending more than I earned. Miserable. Lucien Jiang wore a plain, dark blue outfit. His hair was tied up under a jade crown. He looked every bit the part. He placed the money I'd used to bribe the officials back on the table, untouched. His expression was cool, the same as always. I couldn't help rubbing my fingernails. That money had been mine to begin with. He acted as if he'd done me a great favor. "Now can you tell me?" he asked. I shot him a sideways look. "Since you took off the uniform, don't use that tone with me." He said nothing more and sat down on his own. When I was nearly done with the accounts, I brought over a plate of sunflower seeds and sat across from him. "This story is expensive. You'd better listen carefully. It's a long story. When Princess Eleanor was 7, her mother passed away. Princess Eleanor fell seriously ill. The emperor pitied her and handed her to the empress to raise. Living under someone else's roof, her wet nurse could only teach her from childhood how to bow her head and how to protect herself. Thankfully, the empress treated her well, and the emperor adored her. Little by little, Princess Eleanor brightened again. At 11, she insisted on studying with her imperial brothers. The emperor couldn't refuse her, so he let her go. She wasn't truly there to study. She slept through lessons and ran wild after class. When the teacher smacked her palms, she ran off to complain to the emperor. The princes didn't dare offend. They waited on her hand and foot, as if they ought to light incense and worship her. Everyone in the school either feared her or indulged her. Only one person ignored her. Prince Nathan's companion student, the younger son of Censor Jiang. That companion student wasn't just handsome. He was brilliant. He always finished his assignments first, and he could even help Prince Nathan with policy essays. Princess Eleanor didn't like stirring up trouble, but she did like teasing handsome men, so when the companion student walked, she followed. When he read, she listened. When he ate, she watched. When he went to the latrine, she waited. Slowly, Prince Nathan's companion student became Princess Eleanor's companion student. He climbed walls and trees with her, and he had to take the teacher's punishment for her. Princess Eleanor often wrote to me. Her letters were all companion student this and companion student that. Maybe it was jealousy, but I didn't like him at all. If I ever met him, I would have pinned him down and beaten him senseless. But Princess Eleanor liked him. She took a cricket Prince Nathan had given her and ran to the schoolroom with it. The cricket chirped loudly and fought fiercely, the perfect betrothal gift. Once the companion student accepted her gift, she would go beg the emperor to marry him to her. But that day, he didn't come. Princess Eleanor sat on the schoolroom steps until nightfall. Prince Nathan heard the companion student would never come again. Censor Jiang had colluded with foreign states and was sentenced to death after autumn. The rest of the Jiang family was exiled into military servitude. Princess Eleanor barely heard the rest. She only understood that he wouldn't come back, like her mother, never coming back. She knelt outside the imperial study, begging the emperor to spare him faith. The emperor only said, "A tiger's cub, once grown, will become a disaster." Princess Eleanor didn't understand then. She knelt for 3 without a drop of water, until she fainted. She stayed in bed for over half a year. In the end, the emperor softened. He tacitly allowed the companion student to change his name and remain in the imperial capital. The emperor told Princess Eleanor that as the boy caused no trouble, he would turn a blind eye and let it be. 7 years can change many things. But 7 years later, Princess Eleanor recognized him at once. He wore robes, proper and refined. He stood on the jade steps by the palace gate, solemn and still, graceful and untouched by dust. He was already a vice minister at the Ministry of War, his sharp edge just beginning to show. The emperor's gaze shifted from approval to wariness. Princess Eleanor knew his career had reached its end. Then one day, Princess Eleanor asked me to find her a cricket. I didn't think much of it. I went to the theater district and found her a plum-wing, yellow-headed cricket. I heard it was the champion fighter at the Cricket Pit Casino. Later, Princess Eleanor cradled that treasure and knelt outside the imperial study all night. The next day, the emperor granted the marriage. Since ancient times, a prince consort was not meant to hold power. It put the emperor at ease and let the man keep his dignity. At the very least, it could keep him alive. But he didn't like her. On their wedding night, he spoke to her through the red bridal veil. He said the woman he loved was a simple girl who could sit by his side, adding fragrance to his sleeves as he read and wrote. From then on, they should treat each other with courtesy, nothing more. That night, he carried his bedding to the study. Princess Eleanor sat by the bed with her eyes open until dawn. She spent 2 months at the princess's residence pretending to be that sort of gentle girl. But she couldn't pretend. As a child, she'd only climbed walls and trees. How was she supposed to add fragrance? When she returned to the palace 2 months later, he proposed taking a concubine right in front of the emperor. The emperor flew into a rage and wanted to take his head. Princess Eleanor was furious too. She flipped the table with one sweep her hand. But anger was one thing, taking his head was another. While he wasn't paying attention, she secretly went to the emperor. With tears and snot streaming down her face, she claimed her health was poor and begged the emperor to allow Lucian Jiang to take concubines. Lucian Jiang's first concubine was Magistrate Liu's daughter from Pinhai County. Plain-looking, Princess Eleanor couldn't understand why he would take her. The girl's entire face couldn't compare to even Princess Eleanor's toenail. Princess Eleanor openly picked fights with the new concubine, but she never truly made things hard for her. Not until Princess Eleanor caught her in an affair, and only then did she find an excuse to send her away. After that, more and more concubines entered the princess's residence. Each one was, as he'd said, meek and modest, the kind of small, gentle beauty. Princess Eleanor envied them in her heart, but on the surface, she kept up the posture of a jealous tigress. Back then, she often ran to the carefree pavilion. In front of me, she'd shout and curse, acting as if she wanted to insult his ancestors for 18 generations. Yet not once could she bring herself to lay a finger on him. She told me that a child who has tasted sugar will remember that taste forever. Even if she never gets another bite, she'll still long for it, day after day. Princess Eleanor used to tell me all the time that she'd led a lucky life, I said, brushing the melon seed shells from my hands. So many important people protected her. Every last one of them. and not a single one managed to keep her safe. Lu Xinjiang's expression stayed cool and flat. He held his teacup in a white-knuckled grip, but I knew he understood. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let melon seed shells fall into his cup without noticing. I used to tell stories in tea houses when I was down and out, I went on. When the plot hit hard, the customers cried like tears were free. So how come you've got no reaction at all? Lucian lowered his lashes. When my father was executed, I watched from below. My clan was exiled and sent to the army. They were dragged along in shackles and wooden collars, whipped as they walked. I went to see them off. I've lived under another name for so many years. If I broke down and cried that easily, I'd have died long ago. I hadn't expected him to say so much in one breath. Too bad, I didn't feel sorry for him at all. I'm sorry to her, he said. I poured myself a cup of tea. Sorry? Who have you ever been able to face? You can't even face the kitchen knives you made me grind dull. My father never intended to betray the country. Those so-called letters were nothing but a frame-up. The emperor couldn't even be bothered to investigate before exiling more than 20 members of my family and sending them to the army. I only wanted justice for the Jiang family members who died for nothing. I cut in when his emotions started to rise. Princess Eleanor always told me you two were in love by choice. I laughed at her for being stupid, but I still thought maybe I was biased. Maybe I believed the whole world had wronged her, when actually, deep down, you did care about her. But now I just feel sorry for her. Your heart is packed full of hatred. How could you ever learn to love anyone? If you've never lived someone else's suffering, don't preach kindness. I knew that. After all, Lucian was full of resentment, yet he never said a harsh word to Princess Eleanor. The women he brought in were all meek, the type who couldn't stir up trouble. And those drunken ramblings of his, he couldn't have been completely indifferent to her. To be fair, if I were Lucian, I might have been even more ruthless. But I wasn't him. I didn't have a blood feud. I didn't have a savior to repay. I only knew one idiot who'd fed her devotion to a dog. I had to protect her. The sky was heavy with clouds today. It looked like rain tonight. There weren't many hands left in the shop, so I needed to close the doors before it poured. We had nothing more to say to each other. Just sitting there, staring, was awkward. So I left Lucian in the front hall and went to the back kitchen. When I came out carrying a food box, he still hadn't left. Maybe he wanted to say goodbye. I handed it to him. I sent the head cook away. I made this myself. Eat it if you can stand it. Lucian froze. Boss lady, you don't have to. I was so mad I nearly threw melon seed shells at him. Take it to Princess Eleanor. When it's gloomy and rainy, she loses her appetite. Don't forget to get her some hawthorn too. It helps with digestion. Lucian looked embarrassed. He took the food box in silence and bowed. Now, whenever I saw the vein jumping at his temple, my own temper flared. At the door, he paused again and turned back. If I told you I wanted to save her, would you believe me? I nearly rolled my eyes straight into the clouds. What did it matter whether I believed him? I turned and went upstairs, waving him off without looking back. In July of the 24th year of Tianqi, the emperor passed away. The empress hanged herself in tranquil palace. That September, the new emperor ascended the throne. He declared a general amnesty and reduced taxes and labor. Back then, Marquis Ashford had renamed that insignificant study companion and taught him martial arts and strategy. He must have seen this day coming long ago. Lu Xinjiang was appointed chancellor. He changed his surname back to Jiang and reopened an old miscarriage of justice. Overnight, the nobles of the imperial capital seemed to forget he'd once been that princess's husband who favored concubines and neglected his wife. Matchmakers and gift-givers wore down the threshold of the chancellor's residence. Business at Carefree Pavilions slowly improved, too. The musicians I'd dismissed came back one after another. Strings and flutes filled the air, unending. The common folk who once cursed Marquis Ashford as a traitor switched sides and praised him instead. Hawkers, performers, bird trainers, people flowed through the streets in an endless stream. Maybe that was how it was always meant to be. Court politics shifted like storm clouds and those in power walked on thin ice. But for ordinary people, the sun was still the sun. Whoever sat on the throne, life still had to be lived. By my count, I hadn't gone out in ages. I was about to start growing mushrooms on my head. I heard Lucian Jiang had brought Princess Eleanor back to the Chancellor's residence. I didn't know what method he used to make Marquise Ashford let her stay. Back then, the old emperor kept the study companion, and the emperor became the lay emperor. Now Marquise Ashford had kept a princess of the previous dynasty. Who knew whether he could sleep soundly at night? Either way, Lucian hadn't broken his word. He'd done what I couldn't. But I wasn't grateful. If not for him, would any of this mess have happened? And that heartless little thing, Princess Eleanor, never came to see me. Instead, every few days she sent someone with a letter. She never studied properly as a child. Her handwriting looked like a dog's scribbles, and it got uglier by the day. The letters were full of nothing. Over and over she told me she was doing well, and I shouldn't worry, and so on, as if I really worried about her that much. When I had nothing to do, I took those letters out and read them again and again. After several days, I could recite them by heart. A letter was still a good sign. If she could write, it meant she was alive and well. I don't know which day it was, but Princess Eleanor suddenly wrote that she'd caught a cold. Half the page was devoted to describing how Lucian had already found the best physician in the imperial capital to treat her. And I shouldn't worry. I squinted at her dog-scratch handwriting and thought, a cold needs famous doctors hunted down? Don't ask why I didn't go to the Chancellor's residence to see her. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't get past the door. A servant from Carefree Pavilion stood beside me with his head drooping. He was still holding the visiting card we'd sent to the Chancellor's residence. I didn't even look up. I was focused on teasing a cricket. Sent back again? He didn't dare answer. That made 3 times this month. How boring. Crickets these days aren't as fun as the old ones. I tossed the straw stalk onto the table. Take this to the Chancellor's residence. Tell them it's a generous gift from Carefree Pavilion. Back then, it was valuable enough to be used as betrothal. I refused to believe it couldn't reach Princess Eleanor. Not long after, the servant came back beaming, happier than if he'd just gotten married. They accepted it? They did. They did. The Chancellor asked you to go over. Tell him if he wants me there, he can prepare a carriage and come invite me properly, I said, dabbing on rouge and sliding a jeweled hairpin into my hair at a slant. I only sent a visiting card to the Chancellor's residence for Princess Eleanor's sake. Does he really think he's something special? The servant swallowed. We? Really say that? Word for word. I changed into a long vermilion dress embroidered with silver thread, butterflies, and flowers. Princess Eleanor had sent palace seamstresses to make it for me. This was my first time wearing it. I liked simple colors. Something this bright suited someone lively like Princess Eleanor. After I dressed and went out, the carriage was already waiting. The driver moved to help me up, but Lucian stopped him. He helped me into the carriage himself, then sat in the driver's seat. Ignoring the stunned looks from the driver and passers-by, he picked up the whip and set off. This, he began. I lifted the curtain and cut him off. I know. You're willing to do it, and I deserve it. I couldn't see his face, but I guessed he probably rolled his eyes. Princess Eleanor's health, he started again. Princess Eleanor and I have known each other since childhood. Some things don't need to be spelled out. With his back to me, Lucian nodded. I was sure I got on his nerves, and I figured he felt the same about me. But for some reason today, I started making conversation anyway. I've been thinking of going back to my old trade. I wrote a story, a rich young lady and a fallen study companion. Boring and cliched. Fine. Forget I said anything. After a long silence, he spoke again, slow and quiet. Give them a good ending. In July, the heat flares. In September, winter clothes are issued. The sun was good today, and the wind was mild. But it was still autumn now, so I brought a cloak for Princess Eleanor. The Chancellor's residence was huge. I followed Lucian all the way to the separate courtyard where Princess Eleanor stayed. It wasn't big, but it had everything. Bridges over running water, pavilions, flowers and grass. There was also a faint scent of medicine. A whole stretch of autumn chrysanthemums bloomed in full glory. Ginkgo leaves covered the ground like a swarm of dead butterflies. Beside the small kitchen was an empty room. It looked freshly cleaned. What is this place? I asked him, but he didn't answer. He only threw my earlier line back at me. You and Princess Eleanor have known each other since childhood, Some things don't need to be spelled out. When I saw Princess Eleanor, she was sitting in the doorway, leaning against the frame. She wore a loose, pale tea-white magnolia gauze dress. Her black hair was gathered into a soft cloud bun. She only wore a few strands of milky white pearls. She had powder on and rouge on her lips. Still, she looked so haggard she barely seemed human. She smiled at me, so gentle, so tender it made me want to curse. The moment I opened my mouth, tears spilled out in a rush. I wiped them away, and more fell. Princess Eleanor's smile deepened. She covered her mouth with a handkerchief and coughed softly. She asked, "Why are you crying?" I wiped my tears, sniffling. You're so ugly." She laughed again, soft and gentle, eyes lowered, obedient, ugly beyond words. This was when she should have been chasing me around the yard with a cleaver. "Is Lucian starving you? How did you get so skinny you're like a bamboo pole? I'm so fierce. How would he dare starve me? Isn't he afraid I'll tear the roof off his study?" I laughed through my tears. I'd almost forgotten. She used to be the kind of person who'd climb onto rooftops and rip tiles off. Princess Eleanor leaned on my shoulder and held my hand, talking and talking. It was strange. Every time she was with me, she always had endless things to say. Lucian sat nearby and watched her, smiling faintly, as if the years were peaceful. That bastard. If only he'd been like this from the start. Princess Eleanor said she'd been happy lately. She'd finally had some time alone with Lucian and didn't want me to disturb them, so she hadn't seen me. A lie like that wouldn't fool a 3-year-old. I cracked the melon seeds she'd prepared and hummed. "You were afraid you'd scare me, being so ugly." Princess Eleanor laughed like a flower. She lowered her head and toyed with the ring on my finger. She said she was blessed. Important people stayed by her side her whole life. Even if she was reaching the end, there was more joy than sorrow. "Spit it out. Spit it out. Don't you dare talk like that." I raised my hand as if to hit her, but I couldn't bring myself to. Even the king of hell wouldn't take someone this stupid. Back when Lucian took concubines, I always told Princess Eleanor to let it go. A person lives one life, drifting through crowds. In the end, it's all just that. What can't be set down? But when I put it on myself, carefree pavilion, braised pork, 4 joy meatballs, and this stupid little fool who'd wasted away to a bamboo pole, there was too much in this world I couldn't let go of. Today I specially called in the kitchen chef from Carefree Pavilion to make lunch at the Chancellor's residence. His skills hadn't changed. But this time, half the dishes on the full table went untouched. After lunch, Princess Eleanor shooed Lucian away. The two of us lay down on the daybed to rest. She curled up quietly against me, holding my hand and tracing circles in my palm, eyes lowered, obedient, fragile as a pale butterfly on its last breath. Sunlight draped over us, warm and soft. I couldn't sleep. I chatted with her, on and off, like idle talk. "Princess Eleanor, Carefree Pavilion just got a new group of musicians. They're pretty as flowers. Tomorrow I'll bring them over for you to see." Princess Eleanor, do you remember the first time you met me? You were sprawled on the ground, crying with snot and tears everywhere. I remember thinking, what an ugly little girl. She'll never get married. Princess Eleanor, why don't I just sell Carefree Pavilion? Then I'll have money and I'll take you out to drink and have fun. Princess Eleanor, you're too skinny. Is the Chancellor's residence cook that bad? From now on, I'll cook for you, all right? Princess Eleanor didn't answer. Her fingers went slack in my palm. "Princess Eleanor, remember that chubby boy you beat up when you were little? He got married. His kid is already 5 months old." "Princess Eleanor, that empty, ruined room at your place, it's a medicine room, right? I guessed it right away." "Princess Eleanor, the kitchen knives at Carefree Pavilion have rusted." My voice cracked with tears. "Princess Eleanor, wake up please. Look at me again. I won't fight you for 4 joy meatballs anymore. I won't scold you. Please just look at me." Autumn insects murmured on and on. A slanted moon hung in half a window. I sat against the headboard with an outer robe over my shoulders, watching the candlewick shrink on its stand. These past days I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of the past, father, mother, Annie with her sharp mouth, and Lucian Jiang who never loved me. One memory after another. It all felt like a different life. I met Annie outside the palace. I was small then, with a father who doted on me and a mother who loved me. I grew bold. I hid in Prince Nathan's carriage and slipped out of the palace. Why my brother left the palace that day, I can't really remember anymore. I only remember pestering Prince Nathan to buy me osmanthus cakes from Sue's shop. I stood beneath a short tree at the end of the street and waited. A chubby boy came over and wanted to trade a flatbread for the jade pendant at my waist. I refused, so he tried to snatch it. In the scuffle, I was shoved down. My knee struck a stone and blood seeped out. I was still a princess of the realm. I'd never suffered such humiliation. I burst into tears, crying for my brother to save me. The chubby boy panicked and bolted. Annie was sitting on a tree branch then, looking down at me from above. "Idiot," she said. "You cry so ugly. Pathetic." Annie jumped down from the tree in one smooth motion and tossed me a grimy, ugly square of cloth, her face full of disgust. "If you've got guts, come with me and beat him up." Then Annie led me to block the chubby boy in an alley. We beat him until his face was bruised and his nose swollen, and my brother ended up paying a lot of money. That day, Annie took me to many places. We ate noodles at a street stall. We listened to songs at a restaurant. We watched a crowd gathered around fighting crickets. We ran through alleys until we were sweating. Looking back, that was the happiest day of my life. Anything new felt worth seeing and touching. Annie always scolded me for acting like I'd never seen the world. It wasn't that I'd seen nothing. It was just that I'd never played with ordinary things alongside someone as interesting as Annie. When we parted, reluctant to leave each other, I thought Mother would surely scold me this time and punish me to copy texts in the ancestral hall. But she didn't. Mother wasn't waiting outside Magnolia Hall like before. Waiting for me were only 2 white palace lanterns and the muffled sobs of maids. I asked my wet nurse where Mother had gone. She only reddened around the eyes, covered my ears, and led me inside. I thought she would tell me Mother had gone far away, or that she was watching me from the heavens. But she calmly told me, Mother was dead, she would never return. Mother was dead. She died from a bowl of poisoned lotus seed congee. Father flew into a rage and sent people to investigate. But somehow, the matter ended in silence. A junior eunuch from the imperial kitchen confessed and was executed hastily. Mother was buried soon after. The white funeral banners at Magnolia Hall were taken down. Everyone kept their mouths shut, as if Mother had never existed. Only my wet nurse mentioned once, offhandedly, that the eunuch had once received kindness from the Empress before he entered the palace. After that, I fell seriously ill. Father pitied my youth and handed me to the Empress to raise. I was terrified, but I had no choice. Only by living under the Empress's care would my life and death be tied to hers. Only then would she tolerate me. What the Empress had done had already chilled Father's heart. She could only rely on me to keep a shred of his pity, so she indulged me without restraint. It was laughable, really. Mother had Father's deepest favor, yet she died without answers. The Empress calculated everything and lived in fear, yet she still never won Father's heart. I played dumb and acted sweet. I treated a thief as a mother. I used arrogance and tantrums to numb myself. It was nothing but surrender, after I accepted reality. Father saw it all. He saw his wife's methods. He saw his daughter's fear. He saw everything, but what could he do? His love, hatred, gratitude, and disappointment toward the Empress left him only silence. He could only shift his guilt toward my mother onto me and indulge me in every way. In the deep palace, dignity and composure were everywhere. So were grace and talent. Yet they were only false robes draped over grim bones. Where red blooms brightest, bones grow thin. Annie lived outside the palace. We rarely met. We wrote letters often. She told me about strange, funny things. Somehow, in her hands, even the most ordinary events became vivid. Annie said she wanted to become a storyteller. She would write all the fun things in the world into storybooks and tell them to me. She asked what I wanted to do in the future. I only told her I wanted to stay alive. I never told her about the palace. I was afraid she'd see the brocade laid over blood, the jade steps built on bones. I was afraid she wouldn't want to speak to me anymore. Much later, I asked Annie why she was so good to me. She cracked melon seeds, casual as ever, and said, "Because you're too stupid." When I was 11, my wet nurse died. I refused to stay alone in Magnolia Hall. I made a scene until I was allowed to study with my brothers. In the classroom I met Lucien Jiang. I didn't know then it was the start of yet another misfortune. At the time, Lucian was only Prince Nathan's study companion, but he was astonishingly bright. Poetry and prose came to him as easily as breathing. Even at that age, he already carried the bones of a true scholar. Even now, I still think Lucian was the most beautiful man I've ever seen, like blue bellflowers blooming on a snowy mountain peak under moonlight. Beautiful and cold. No matter what, he was the only person in the palace who didn't treat me like a princess. He didn't try to please me, and he didn't scheme to kill me. He simply saw me as a child without a mother. Pitiful and annoying. But I didn't care. I trailed behind him all day, chattering in his ear. When he ate, I dragged a little stool over and sat beside him, watching until he finally pushed half his rice into my bowl. When he read, I sprawled across his desk and slept until drool ran down, and he woke me with disgust. When he went to the latrine, I waited outside. The tutor stamped and cursed me for disgracing the learned, while Lucian was so embarrassed he couldn't lift his head. He was someone who liked quiet. He should have found me unbearable, but he had no way to stop me. I often wrote to Annie about him. Annie often wrote back to scold me. It was strange. Annie didn't care who you were. She'd always jab at you with words now and then. And Lucian, no matter who he faced, was gentle and kind. Yet no one could enter his heart. If those two ever met, I wonder if they'd fight. Maybe my tireless shamelessness moved the heavens. The study companion's icy heart softened into spring water. He began to offer me half his lunch on his own. When I slept like the dead, he draped clothes over me. When I climbed walls and trees, caught butterflies and birds, he came with me, afraid I'd fall and die. But good times never last. One day he stopped coming to class. Prince Nathan said the Jiang family had been raided. The study companion would soon be exiled. That night I held a cricket, one that had nearly been used as betrothal, and sat on the classroom steps until midnight. I didn't know what crime Lord Jiang had committed, but a study companion was only a study companion. Why should he bear a disaster that fell from the sky? I went to Father. I knelt before the imperial study and begged him to spare Lucian, but Father refused to see me. This time, Father didn't soften because of my crying. The Empress didn't come for me either. The palace servants passed back and forth as if I were nothing. I'd never felt more like a stray dog no one wanted. Mother's death. The study companion's exile. Family schemes. Love kept apart. The darkest, bloodiest secrets of the palace tore open before me again, raw and dripping. I knelt for 3 days and 3 nights. In the end, I fainted. The illness left a lingering weakness. Whenever the sky was overcast and it rained, my whole body turned cold and I had no strength. I never told anyone. I was truly afraid that one day I'd be killed, and all they would say was, an old illness flared up. Even Annie only knew that I lost my appetite on gloomy days. She even had someone send in many packets of hawthorn, saying it would help digestion. The palace had every kind of hawthorn imaginable. Still, I counted those pieces again and again. I hid them like treasures and only allowed myself 2 a day. In the end, many spoiled. Thankfully, Father still softened. He told me the study companion had changed his name and stayed in the imperial capital. As long as he didn't act rashly, Father could turn a blind eye. I smiled and said that was good. But I knew, from that moment on, the study companion was gone from the world. I never imagined I would see him again in this life. I never imagined that cricket, nearly used as betrothal, would prove useful. This cricket was something Annie searched everywhere to find for me. It wasn't from the palace. It was clean, something that belonged only to me. It was my true heart. But I forgot. Lucian wasn't Annie. How could he see the true heart I placed in that cricket? I remember the bridal procession that stretched 10 ely, and I remember the concubines carried into the residence with nothing but a simple sedan. On our wedding night, Lucian told me he didn't love me. He loved the refined young ladies who could share ink and lamplight with him. I knew it wasn't me. He had opposed the marriage from the start, so I begged Father to allow him to take concubines. But I discovered Lucian didn't love those concubines either. He never spent a night in their rooms. He lived in his study day after day. I nearly suspected he'd hidden a lover there. I pitied those concubines. I pitied them trapped behind high walls, sleeping alone, never receiving love. Sometimes I even forgot I was just as pitiful as they were. During that time, I ran to Annie whenever I could. As if only by staying beside her did I feel I wouldn't be discarded. Only then did I stop wrapping myself in a thick cocoon. Only then did I feel like a living person. Later, Marquis Ashford raised troops. Lucian overturned an old case. Father died miserably. The Empress killed herself. I was thrown into prison. Even after I was no longer a princess, calling him Lucian Jiang still felt unnatural. I'd gotten used to saying Prince Consort, so I never bothered to change it. Lucian didn't divorce me. If I lost his protection then, Marquis Ashford would never have tolerated me. Lucian traded the military power of the imperial capital for a chancellor's post that was all title and no real authority. He promised that for as long as the new emperor lived, I would not be allowed to step outside the residence. In truth, we both knew my time left was short. The family around me was dead or broken. I refused to drag Annie into it. All I could do was write letters every day, telling her I was fine and she shouldn't worry. Beyond that, I had no way to do anything for her. I missed her, but I could only miss her. Now I no longer dare to look back on many things. Whenever I think of the past, I feel the world has changed beyond recognition. I want to cry, but no tears come. The candle wick on the desk flickered. Suddenly I began to cough hard, coughing up a handkerchief full of blood. Lucian pushed the door open and crossed the room in 2 quick strides. He half knelt by my bed and asked, "Why are you coughing blood again?" "When did you come?" I asked. "I've been standing outside for a while." I nodded and quietly put the handkerchief away. Ever since I entered the Chancellor's residence, he stood outside my window every night for a long time. Lucian's change in attitude was so drastic that I often felt Annie must have said something to him. He personally arranged my food, clothing, and shelter. He sent people everywhere to find famous physicians to treat my old illness. I don't know why people always wait until everything is beyond saving before they panic and try to make amends. Even if you patch the holes on the surface, what does it change? The root has already rotted through. It's too late for everything. Lucian tucked in my quilt and trimmed the candlewick. Strange. When he took concubines, I loved him. When he helped Marquis Ashford plot rebellion, I loved him. When he locked me in the dungeon, I still loved him. But just now, when he lifted the scissors to trim the candlewick, I suddenly realized I didn't love him anymore. I didn't love him, and I didn't hate him. I only felt terribly tired. I wanted to fall asleep once, completely. To sleep like that, and never wake again. How good that would be. The next day, when I woke, Lucian Jiang was in my courtyard, watering the flowers. He stood there, helpless, in front of the chrysanthemums I'd planted, like a child waiting to be punished after doing something wrong. I don't even know why. They just wilted. I had planted this patch myself and tended it with my own hands, yet their decline offered no comfort. Maybe they won't make it through autumn. My voice was even. I didn't know whether I meant the flowers or myself. Lucian's lips pressed into a thin line. A pleading look flickered in his eyes. How could that be? It's only September. Chrysanthemums can't fade already. Princess Eleanor, they won't die, will they? These are summer chrysanthemums. They should have withered long ago. They only lasted this long because they were cared for so well. No, we can pull them up and plant again, all right? We'll plant autumn chrysanthemums, winter chrysanthemums. We'll plant plum blossoms, flowers that bloom in every season and never fail, all right? Panicked, he reached for my hand, his eyes begging. I smiled and gently pushed him away. Don't be foolish. He wouldn't listen. He dropped to his knees and tried to dig the summer chrysanthemums up, but he didn't dare jostle a single bloom, so he scooped at the soil with his bare hands, on and on, even after his palms were rubbed raw and bleeding. Those jade-like fingers were smeared with mud and blood now. He knelt in the dust like a gambler who'd lost everything. Watching him, a sudden sadness rose in me. Back then, when I knelt outside the imperial study and begged Father to spare him, was I just as frantic as he was now? I'd thrown myself at Lucian like a moth into a flame, but our fate had already died the day his household was seized. I looked away and went back into my room. In the end, Lucian still had the entire patch of summer chrysanthemums replaced with autumn ones. Bright, lively blossoms in full bloom. That night, he did something he almost never did. He came to drink with me. He wouldn't let me touch the wine. He only poured cup after cup for himself, forcing it down until he was drunk and muttering nonsense. More than 20 people in my Jiang family were framed. My father died unjustly. I wake from nightmares every night. My father's spirit comes to me, telling me to avenge him. Princess Eleanor, I'm scared. I'm scared those wronged souls in my family will never find peace. I'm scared that when I reach the underworld, I won't be able to face my father. He swallowed another mouthful of wine and choked on his tears. You're drunk? When I saw you again, I didn't know how happy I was, but I'm not the boy who could stand under the sun as a steady companion anymore. I was afraid you'd recognize me, but I was also afraid you wouldn't. Marquis Ashford saved my life. I can't betray him. The day I brought the last concubine into the house, Marquis Ashford had her tell me everything was ready, and I should close the net as soon as possible. Revenge so close at hand, did I think I'd be happy? Lucian took my hand and pressed it to his chest. But I couldn't feel happy at all. I didn't know what to do. I was afraid, but I didn't even know what I was afraid of. It felt like I was walking along the edge of a cliff. Forward was a bottomless abyss. Backward was being shattered to pieces. I got myself drunk, and in a daze I actually ran to the carefree pavilion. I even thought, if only you were there. If only you'd seen through my malice back then and killed me with one stroke. I thought hearing this would make me hate him, curse him until I was hoarse, or that my heart would soften and I'd hold him and sob. But I did neither. I only drew my hand from his, inch by inch, and asked quietly, "But I saved your life too. Why did you betray me?" Lucian's eyes were red. His cheeks were red too. He froze, lost and helpless, only able to call my name again and again. I gave him a bright smile. It's all in the past. Yes, it was all in the past. I didn't tell him that when he vanished that day, I sent half the staff of the princess's residence to search everywhere. I didn't tell him that in that torrential rain my old illness flared up, cold sweat soaking me through, my whole body aching, until I lay there alone, biting the bedclothes, waiting for dawn. I truly had no strength left to argue over who owed whom, who betrayed whom. If I had no power to change anything, then it was better to forget it all. Suddenly I thought of Annie. If she were here now, she would dump an entire basket of melon seed shells over Lucien's head. Then she'd plant her hands on her hips, jab a finger at his forehead and say, "You did everything you should have, and everything you shouldn't have. What's the use of saying this nonsense now?" I pictured Annie's face when she cursed someone, and I couldn't help laughing. "Lucian, tomorrow, invite Annie here for me. I want to see her." Early the next morning, Annie had someone deliver crickets, plum blossom-winged yellow heads, just like back then. Annie was still angry at Lucian. She insisted he come in person to ask her, and I found it amusing. I told him to drive the carriage and bring her back. Before he left, Lucian asked me, if Annie asked about my health, what should he say? I only told him Annie and I had known each other for a long time. Some things didn't need to be spelled out. I also had them clear out the medicine room. If Annie saw it, she would surely be upset. Last night, by candlelight, I wrote Annie a letter. I weighed every word for a long time, but no matter what I wrote, it never sounded like what I truly meant. In the end, I burned it. I'd avoided her for so long, I didn't know if Annie would be angry, but she'd always been sharp-tongued and soft-hearted. At worst, she'd scold me a few times. She never had it in her to stay angry with me. Annie liked plain, clean colors. Today I chose a tea-white dress, dabbed on a touch of lip color, and placed a floral ornament on my forehead. Still, I couldn't hide the sickly pallor in my face. When she saw me, she'd surely laugh and call me ugly again. Quietly, I leaned against the doorway and watched ginkgo leaves blanket the courtyard like shattered butterflies. The weather was fine today. The wind was gentle. It was the best kind of day to say goodbye properly. Annie, so I might as well be speaking to you face to face. Seeing your handwriting is like seeing you. As you open this letter, I hope your brow can finally smooth. This may be the last letter I ever write to you, so I'm borrowing a few of those bookish phrases I learned back then while studying with Lucian. Annie, these past few days I keep thinking about when we were little, about the alleyways you dragged me through, the storybooks you told me, the 4 happiness meatballs you fought me for, the letters you sent me. At the feast of our childhood, our laughter never seemed to end. And all at once I realized that the beautiful dream I chased so desperately all my life may have been beside me all along. Back when I couldn't let things go, I always told you I was lucky. Now that I finally can, I still say the same. Annie, I'm someone with good fortune. After I was released from prison, I drifted through my days. I couldn't bring myself to die, and I couldn't truly live either. This hollow shell has long since fallen apart. That I've lasted until now hasn't been easy. I'm not afraid of death. What I fear is you being left alone in this world, with no one by your side. I fear you weeping over this ruined body of mine, so that even in the afterlife, I would tremble and never find peace. Annie, you are my only lingering attachment in this world. I still have so many things I want to say to you, but I know that even if I say nothing at all, you understand me. Annie, the only regret of my life is that I never got to sing wildly with you, dance with you, and live without restraint among rivers and hills. In the next life, all right? In the next life, let it be my turn to protect you. Now I must go far away. Tears and ink fall together. I don't even know what I'm writing anymore. Take care. Your younger sister, Princess Eleanor.